Hi everybody, my name is Dennis and welcome back to another video. It is extremely late, it's almost February, and I've been extremely busy lately, and I'm just now getting my best and worst albums list out. If you check, my worst albums of the year list should already be out on my channel, and this video will be going up probably a day or two after that one. But anyways, this is the top 10 best albums of 2018. So without further ado, let's get in at number 10. We have Little Dark Age by MGMT. This album kind of came out of nowhere in how amazing it was. Like, this album had no right to be as good as it was. MGMT has sounded the best they have in a long time with a completely different sound than anything they've ever done before. The vocals on this are beautiful. The instrumentation is dark yet beautiful and elegant at the same time. The lyrics are very well written. They're oftentimes cryptic and interesting, and other times they're very simple and straightforward, and other times they're just good fun. Almost every song in here is really enjoyable, and it's a great listen that if it weren't for a couple of weaker tracks towards the end of the album, may have even been higher on this list. It was truly a beautifully impressive piece of work, and I hope they continue this same style in the future, because it worked really well for them here on what was probably the best synth pop record of the year. So from there, we have at number 9... Art of Doubt by Metric. This album is just so much fun to listen to. Almost every song just has these epic guitar riffs. The vocals on this are really strong. I love the vocal performance of the lead singer. I think almost every song is just so much fun to listen to. It has this nice, heavy-handed alt-rock sound to it that we don't really hear much of nowadays. It tastefully blends in these elements of electronic at times, but not to the extent that it becomes distracting, but just enough to keep the music interesting, and each song has its own diverse sound and still works really well as a complete album. It's a lot of fun to listen to, and even if the lyrics aren't always something to, go crazy over, it is fairly well written. I didn't pick up on any horrible lyrics that stood out as just ugh. But it's just such a fun listen. It was an amazing alt-rock record, and it's really just shows the dark, gritty, yet fun side of alt-rock that I wish we could see more of. And moving on to number 8 in a completely different stylistic tone, we have Taboo by Denzel Curry. This album is honestly just a banger after banger after banger. I love so many songs on here. Sumo is a great track, Clout Cobain's a great track, and even some of the more lighter tracks at the beginning, like Taboo, is really, really great. And I like the interesting structural elements of it being split into the light, the gray, and the dark. And we can see a lot of that through the lyrics and even oftentimes the tone of the music. And I find it kind of interesting how even the light side of things isn't bright or positive, but it's almost a more of a better outlook on bad things, where as we get darker and darker as the album goes on, it begins to embrace this negative thinking, for better or for worse. And it's really just such a fun listen. It's just, like I said, it's just banger after banger. Denzel Curry has some amazing flows, some killer production on this thing. You can just turn this as loud as you possibly can, and it's just so much to listen to, and it was amazingly written as well. Whether it's the wittiness of something like Sumo, or it's the dark, serious, interesting styles of Clout Cobain, or even just the well-structured storytelling of just the entire album as a whole, of just explaining his mindset a lot of times. It's amazingly written. It's a lot of fun to listen to. And I mean, if like rap isn't your thing, you're gonna hate this album, but it was an amazing rap album. I loved almost every single song on here. Just couldn't get enough of this thing. And I mean, if that's my number 8 of the year, you can see how much I really do adore the albums that come after this. From here at number 7 is more of a controversial pick. A lot of people didn't like this album, and I loved it the first time I heard it, and it just got better since then. And that goes to Yay by Kanye West. This album, I don't see what all the hate is for. I mean, I'll admit, Kanye says stupid things outside of his music. He says a lot of weird things that are just like, dude, what are you even thinking? But the dude makes amazing music, and that's something that, regardless of your political beliefs or how much you agree with the things he says, he makes amazing, amazing music. And unless he puts his political beliefs in his music, I like to just keep those separate. I mean, I thought that this was phenomenally produced, and it's a brief listen to. It's only like 7 tracks, but I mean, Ghost Town made my top 10 songs of the year list for a reason. I mean, beautifully produced, amazing vocal performances, and also the really strong lyricism on all the tracks except for All Mine. But even All Mine had some really fun production to it, I can't deny that. And every single song had its own great things, if not everything being great about it. I mean, I Thought About Killing You, I think, is an underrated track on the album that I found very dark, very compelling, and very powerful. And this is honestly his most personal album, probably since My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And this personal experience that he gives into it, even though it's not this typical braggadocious persona that he gives off, it's a really interesting listen. I mean, we get to see the mental state of someone who deals with bipolar, and that's something that not a lot of people can sing about as interestingly or as artfully as Kanye is able to on this album. And I mean, we see all the highs, the lows, the various things that go through his mind, and it really shows a lot of who he is as a person, even a lot of his personal growths. I think it's a very important album, not just for him musically, but also for him personally. I thought pretty much every song on here was great, probably the only exception to that being All Mine, like I said before. But I mean, this is such a beautifully deep listen, and I don't think enough people give it credit for what it is. It's not your typical rap album. It's not your typical Kanye album even. But it's a really important album that I think goes under a lot of people's radars. And moving in to number 6, we have Idols with the album Joy is an Act of Resistance. And this was probably the best political album of the year. And I've said it before, but the way I judge political messages in music, it doesn't matter what I think. I don't think it matters what anyone thinks. I just care about how well the ideas are conveyed. Are they stated in a convincing manner? Are they stated very well? Were they very articulate in what they're trying to say? And does it leave any sort of an emotional impact? And to all those questions, I would say yes. That on so many tracks, they cover difficult topics like just, for example, immigration in an interesting, unique, and powerful way that I think, at least personally, opens up your mind to ideas that you'd never considered before, and even points of view that you may have overlooked. And it was a great, great rock album. I mean, the guitar riffs and the drum work were amazing, but really the big standout was just how amazing this album was written. And it's a fun listen. It has a great sound to it. You can listen to it more for more than just what he's saying. But there was so much to this. It's a very dense album. There's so much packed into each of these songs, so much emotion, so much power, so much feeling just packed into every single track, and you can just feel that. It's an album that you can just feel. And that's not something that a lot of albums can accomplish. And Idols does it amazingly. I mean, like I said, it had some great instrumentation, some strong vocal performances, and some just truly amazing tracks. I mean, just look at something like Danny Nadelko or Jude, and just go listen to something like that and tell me that it doesn't leave some sort of an impact on you. Even if you don't like the sound of it per se, listen to what he's saying. Just listen to the words that are coming out of his mouth, because they're really something profound. And from there, number five album of the year. We are in the top 5. This is where things get great. We have another controversial one, but because even though a lot of people did really like this album, I don't think a lot of people put it as high as I'm doing right now. But that's Trench by 21 Pilots. And really, the best way I can describe this album is wow. 21 Pilots, and I even enjoy a lot of 21 Pilots' prior music. I don't think it was amazing. I think they definitely had a lot of room to grow, but I still at least generally enjoyed a lot of their prior stuff. But this album here was truly something special. And it showed 21 Pilots improving on themselves in every way imaginable. The vocal performances were more emotional, more convincing, more powerful. The lyrics were more strongly written. They gave a better sense of the lore of the stories they're trying to tell. The instrumentation pushed more boundaries. It was a lot more interesting. It was a lot more dense. It was a lot more intriguing. And just the overall flow of the album worked really well in ways that they haven't been able to accomplish before. This was definitely their best album to date, and it's one that I hope they can recreate in quality, if not improve on it in the future. I mean, there was not a single bad song on this album. Not a single one. At the very worst, a song was decent. And I mean, if you can go through an entire album, the worst that I have to say about a song is it was pretty good. That's something really impressive, because I mean, very, very few albums can leave that same feeling of every single song is enjoyable. And even though there were some songs that I did feel were better than others, I mean, Levitate and Neon Gravestones are just in a world of their own. I love both of those songs to death. I love every single aspect of both of those songs. But really, this album just works as a whole. It's one that just gets better with each listen. I remember the first time I heard it, I thought that was pretty good. And then as I listened to it more, I was like, wow, that was great. And I listened to it again. Wow, that was great. And it just gets better with each listen. It's definitely one that if you don't enjoy it at first, give it another try. If you don't like 21 Pilots, give this album a try. I mean, don't just go under the 21 Pilots are cringy thing, because they really do have some great work on here. It's better than anything they've put out before. It's even experimental at times, which I think is just wild. I didn't expect anything this boundary pushing from them, and I think it's amazing. I'd love to see more things like this from them in the future. And moving into number 4, so really I would consider everything from number 5 and to number 10 to still be at the anywhere from a decent to strong 8 out of 10. But my top 4, I would say, are all 9s. So if that just puts into perspective what I think of these, I mean, an 8 is a great score. Don't get me wrong. And just because something is an 8 doesn't mean that it was bad. So I mean, an 8 is a great score. But everything from here up, I'd say, is a 9. I didn't hear any 10s this year. I gotta be honest. I didn't hear any 10s. But everything from here up is a 9. So beginning with the 9s, we have the indie rock album Nearer My God by Foxing. And this was probably my favorite rock album of this year, because just everything about it is so moving, and it's hard to pinpoint what is so special about it, because just everything is so special about it. I mean, I love a lot of the lyricism on here, like, for example, the opening track where it's comparing the lead singer's emotional state of feeling of unworthiness and feeling like he's unwanted and unloved to that of a disobedient horse in a stable, one that's just cooped up, one that's mistreated because it makes a mistake and then it's just shunned. And we see these themes of wanting to be loved and not having that desire fulfilled shown throughout the album, and it's really conveyed in a beautiful manner. And the production on this album is top notch. It is top notch. I mean, there were some truly amazing moments on here, and every single song sounds so different from each other, but it all somehow still melds together in this beautiful project. I mean, we have songs that are more powerful or more heavy or more strong and more energized in their vocal performances. Then we have other songs that are more softer, more mellow, that are more easygoing, and both of these are done so tremendously well that I just love basically every song on this album. Again, this is another one where there's no bad songs at all. If anything, everything on this album was great. I would even argue it to that point. I mean, even the songs that have a couple of qualities that I think could have been tweaked a little bit better, most of the song was still great. I mean, this whole album is definitely worth a listen in every single track. Like, just listen to this from start to finish. It's really something beautiful. The vocal performances are emotional. They make you feel. The instruments support these in such a uniquely done way that it's almost like they work with the vocals in a way that not a lot of others do. You know, sometimes you're like, oh, I love the production, I also love vocals, but really they just go hand in hand so beautifully on this album. And it's a phenomenal indie rock record. It's one that I think more people should be paying attention to right now, and I loved basically every minute of this thing. Alright, so moving on to the top 3 albums. At number 3, we got the self-titled Kids See Ghosts record from Kanye and Kid Cudi. And I just gotta say, Kanye had a stellar year. I mean, he made my number 7. Him and Kid Cudi worked together and made my number 3. And even though Kanye had a couple slip-ups here and there with some singles, these two albums just knocked it out of the park. Kids See Ghosts especially. I mean, it's revolutionary. Its sound was really revolutionary. That's all I can really say. Its sound is so unique. It's pushing the boundaries forward of what music is going to. And that's something Kanye consistently does. He consistently pushes music forward. He is an innovator. He's always doing something new while still making it fairly accessible to the public. Probably the only exception to this being Yeezus, which wasn't a good record at all, if I'm being honest, but I digress. Kids See Ghosts is a phenomenal project through and through. Much like Ye, it's very brief, only 7 tracks, and Kanye and Kid Cudi worked so well together. Kid Cudi sounds the best he has in basically ever. I mean, Kanye does his thing amazingly. The flows on this were great. The psychedelic, almost rock-inspired, but still with a slight hip-hop flow production, with some songs that I could say, this isn't even rap. This isn't even a hip-hop. This is just so indescribable. It's hard to describe what genre this is, because it's not rap. It's kind of a psychedelic rock. It's Kids See Ghosts. That's the genre. It's Kids See Ghosts. It's really something just mind-blowing to listen to, because it's just so unique. I mean, they use guitars on this that sound so good. They use various instruments. I mean, and we even have a couple of softer tracks on this that have a light piano in the background, with Kid Cudi's vocal harmonies being so elegant, so beautiful, and the way that like they use various layers of auto-tune or various vocal effects is so amazingly done that this is a record that you just can't get enough of, and it's so beautiful. It's so phenomenal. It's really something revolutionary. Still, only in the top 3. This was a really great year for music. I mean, there were a lot of amazing albums this year, and I mean, this is just scratching the surface. I'm sure there was a lot of things that I didn't even hear that I would have absolutely adored. And that's a part of that is because I didn't start this channel until like August, I think. So, and I wasn't really listening to music at the same rate that I was until that time when I was like, you know what, I want to listen to as much as I possibly can, because there's a lot of hidden gems. There's a lot of hidden gems in music. And these top 2 were definitely both hidden ones that I just happened to stumble across, and I'm really happy that I did. Number 2, I'm giving it to Tash Sultana with her album Flow State. And this is just such a beautiful record. The multi-instrumentalist Tash Sultana does everything just so elegantly. I mean, there are so many instruments used on this thing. I mean, and it's like not even just like, oh, a guitar and a piano and a violin. I mean, there was like 12-string guitars, there was like pan flutes. I'm pretty sure I heard a harp on one of the songs, and that's something unique. That's something really impressive, and it's done beautifully too. I mean, every single instrument on this is used so amazingly, and I love all the instrumental breaks that happen a lot of times in the songs. And most of the songs are quite long, but for good reason, because there are parts of it where she speaks with the music, and there's parts where she lets the music speak for itself, and those moments are really something beautiful. They're really something elegant. They stand out. It's not just instrumental to be instrumental. It's instrumental for a reason. And I mean, we have an entire instrumental track on this, which was amazing. Probably one of the best, if not the best, purely instrumental track that I've heard this year. Excuse me. But I just loved the musical diversity. I loved her vocal performance, and I did cite in my review that I wish she had a bit more of a unique voice, that she used it in more unique ways that we didn't hear other artists doing. But I mean, still, she gave a great vocal performance through and through. I thought her vocals were amazing. I thought the various levels of instrumentation were beautifully unique, so amazingly done, unlike anything I think I've ever heard before. And it was pretty well, the writing was pretty good on top of that. I mean, although simple, it told a nice story of addiction and overcoming that through the power of falling in love with another person. And it's a really sweet story. It's really encouraging, and each track kind of builds on this as time goes on through the record. It is a lengthy listen. I'll be honest, it is a lengthy listen, but it's worth it, because every single note put into this is so beautifully handcrafted that it's such a compelling listen that it just entrances you into it every time you hear it, and it just leaves you in this state of shock. Like, wow, someone made this, and that is just amazing. And now, my number 1 album of the year for 2018. I honestly had a bit of a hard time picking, especially between these top 3 albums. The top 3, you could tell me any of those were album of the year, and I would have no arguments against you, really. But I just had to put this one at number 1, because this one stood out unlike the others. And all of these albums stood out, but this one especially. And that goes to none other than Clarence Clarity with the album Think Piece. This album is so phenomenal. And I know I've used that word to describe a few of these, but I really, really mean it here. It is just wow. The instrumentation is so amazingly experimental while still being accessible at the same time. It's such a unique spin on electronic pop music. It's something that is so amazingly unique, and Clarence Clarity is a great songwriter on top of that. He's really well versed. I mean, pretty much every song on this album was well written, and even though I could see the argument that there isn't as much of a connection between the lyrics to make it feel as cohesive what he's saying, I still saw some pretty common themes, a lot of them being relationships and the use of technology in said relationships, and there's various struggles and emotions that go through one's mind during these times. And I could also see the argument of it wasn't as experimental as his first album, which it wasn't. His first album was definitely more experimental, but I also think this one was a lot more polished. I mean, I loved his first record too. His first record is amazing. I'd probably give that one a 9 as well. And they're both great in their own ways. Where his first one is definitely more experimental. It's more out there. It's more of a intriguing and unique listen. While this one is more polished. It's more friendly. It's more just got its arms open wide. Like, just listen to me. That it just calls you, listen to me. And I loved every single track on this album, without a doubt. I loved every single song on here. Just flat, I did. There wasn't a song that I didn't like. And there's just, it's difficult to put into words how great this album is, because it truly just is that great. I mean, Clarence Clarity, with his amazing vocals, his phenomenal lyricism, his out there, revolutionary, while still being fun, groovy, pleasant, accessible. You can just move with some of the songs, you can just feel some of the songs, and each song has its own place. I mean, they all have their own tones and emotions, and I love how he even samples his own songs on other songs on the same album. I think that's kind of such a quirky thing to do, but I love it. I think it's really interesting, and I think that it was a risk that definitely paid off. I'm looking at the time. This video is definitely going to be in 2 parts. But, wow. I was really just floored with how great this album was. I know I've shown like a couple of songs on here to a couple of my friends, and most of them like, oh, that's too weird for me. And you know what? It's fine. Like, I'll enjoy my weird music because I think that it's great. It's definitely something that I would encourage everyone to check out. I mean, it's Album of the Year for a reason. I mean, that's not a title you should take lightly. I mean, Album of the Year is Album of the Year. I think it's really something. It's not an easy feat to get Album of the Year from anybody. But this definitely earned it. Clarence Clarity, Album of the Year 2018. And I'm really looking forward to hearing all of the great music that's coming in 2019. I mean, I have a few reviews planned, and I've already heard some really great records this year, and I'm really looking forward to reviewing them. I'm probably going to be reviewing them later than everyone else, as I normally do. A lot of it is because, like, my schoolwork is hard, and I'm sorry. Again, I've been really busy lately, and I'm going to try and upload these year-end lists more together, more, like, towards like the beginning of January, because I think it's only fair to wait until the year's actually over to put out the lists. I mean, I pretty much had these lists set by like mid to late December, but I think it's still fair, because I mean, there was some really enjoyable records that came out towards the end of the year, and I mean, you never know, something, I mean, a 10 out of 10 might come on December 31st, you never know. But I mean, that's just the way it is. So another year in music. And this list is honestly just so satisfying to make. Like, the best songs lists are fun. The worst lists are fun. But, I mean, the best albums of the year is really the list that I think I'll be looking forward to making the most each year. Because I definitely loved making this list. And I loved making this video. This is by far the longest video I've ever made. It's definitely going to be 2 parts. I might even put it 3 parts, and maybe not. But, be sure to tell me what some of your favorite albums were this year. What did I miss? I mean, There were some other great albums that I don't think quite made the list. I mean, I didn't really have an honorable mentions, but I mean, I don't know, something like No Name had a great record this year. And there were a few others, but it's like that 2018 had some great albums. But it was a great year for music. I'll be honest, I don't think it was quite as good as 2017. 2017 had some records that I really, really loved. But that's besides the point. That sounds like a topic for another video if you ask me. But again, be sure to tell me what your favorite albums were this year. How wrong were my opinions? Tell me how wrong they were in the comments as always, and I'll see you in the next video.